Good evening. This is my final presentation for the SLO 1 Theory Meets Reality Personal Reflection of Developmental Psychology by me, Elista Fernald. We're set up like this because anything that I go to record doesn't put my face on it, and I wanted to make sure I have my face, but I'm also proud of my presentation, so we're going to do it like this. First off, a little bit of background about me. My name is Elissa Fernald. I'm 18 years old, a freshman at Chaffey College, finishing up my last semester of college. I'm majoring in nursing, and I'm currently an EMT for San Bernardino County. I currently live in San Bernardino County with my mom, my sister, and my mom's boyfriend. I've lived here about 10 years now, and I was born in Reno, Nevada initially, which is what I'll tie into the presentation as it connects back to the theories in my personal life. In this presentation, I will be presenting the project of two theories that I've learned through this psychology course. Each theory will be discussed thoroughly, as well as connecting it back to my personal experiences. Furthermore, this project will reflect on what I've learned as a whole throughout the course and how it changed my perspective on different aspects of my life. What is a theory? To start off, just to get a little bit more background. A theory is any perspective explaining why people act the way that they do. Theories allow us to predict behavior and also suggest how to intervene to improve different behaviors. The first theory that I decided to pick was the one that I personally found most interesting, which was attachment theory, which is a theory formulated by John Bowlby, centering on the crucial importance of our species' survival of being closely connected with a caregiver during early childhood and being attached to a significant other during all of life. Essentially, this theory is just describing us as humans as we grow and survive best when we have someone that we can be close to. Essentially, as babies, obviously the person that we're going to be close to is our parents, and then as we grow a little bit older, we might become close to, friends or significant other. But having a strong connection throughout our life allows us to feel secure as we grow. Okay. Attachment theory in my life. I'd say throughout the beginning of my life, I had a decently strong connection with my parents, just like anybody else would. But as I kind of went through the theory and analyzed it a little bit more, I would say that after reflecting, I would be a little bit more attached to my aunt rather than my parents. And then as I progressed through my teenage years, I began to create an attachment to more of my cousin rather than a parental figure. So more of a friend kind of figure would be what he probably would have been. And then as I get into my late teen years and my early adulthood, I begin to experience more of an attachment to my significant other, as well as my best friend, which I'm super attached to both of them. And interestingly enough, I've realized that I do feel more secure when I have someone that I'm attached to, a secure attachment with someone that's important in my life rather than when I didn't have one. I kind of see the big difference between it. The next theory that I chose was the psychoanalytic theory, which this theory was created through Sigmund Freud, which analyzes the idea of our inner life. So essentially stating that the behavior that we have is derived from our early childhood. This theory includes three structures that he came up with, used to define our personality, which is the id, the ego, and then the superego, which according to this theory, our future to handle certain aspects and challenges in our life is set up through how we were raised. So creating a strong ego or not, depending on which challenges that we're faced with. Furthermore, describing that our emotions and the way that we process certain situations is also a definition of our maturity. So our inner conflict that is determined by, the id, the ego, and the superego. For example, the id is going to be the first kind of get up, which is what makes you feel good in that moment. So almost in an irrational sense, it's what you think of. The ego is more of the realistic part of your inner thoughts, which creates some type of reasoning within the decision, whether it's good or bad. And then you have the superego, which is the morals that you have, and the attempt to do the right thing. So according to Freud, your inner conscience is determined by the way that your parents raised you, therefore explaining that what happened to you as a kid kind of shapes how you act today, and you may not even realize it. Okay. This theory, connecting to my life, I would say in the beginning, I didn't have entirely a normal childhood. My dad was an addict, and then my mom worked a lot of the time, so my sister and I experienced our childhood mostly together, but on our own. We tended to go to places and make decisions that, a typical child probably wouldn't have made. And it's interesting to see this theory describing, essentially how our future is set up by the way that we experience early childhood. And me, I'm a pretty analytical person, so I tend to try and decipher why certain things happen, why I think certain things, and then try and break those down. Therefore, learning this theory, I can see, how I walk myself through each of my decisions, and then it can be explained by, the id, the ego, and the superego. So, for example, I begin, let's say, to regulate an irrational decision. So I begin to think, rationally through the id of, for example, if we're thinking about a fight, I think, oh, I should start, yelling in a fight, which would be the id because it's just the initial thought that kind of comes in. And then I have my ego that comes in. That's more, oh, it'd make me feel better if I would yell in a fight or something. And then obviously the superego comes in, which is, I don't like when my mom and my sister tend to yell when they're mad. And I think you could regulate your emotions a whole lot better than just yelling or, taking a step back and doing it, which also traces back to my childhood because they would do that a lot. So I think I could kind of regulate it through that. Furthermore, the actions, my mom took with working hard all the time and her always at work kind of transferred over to me. And I continuously, want to work and be busy, which I didn't fully realize until I examined the theory of, what happens in my childhood kind of shapes my future. So the reflection onto, this entire project as it comes to an end. After learning these theories, I tend to see others differently already. At times I would wonder, why my sister was so happy when she was with her friends and her boyfriend and less with her family and my mom and stuff. However, after learning some of these theories, I've seen that, she's not attached to her mom as much. She finds more comfort in her friends, which also ties into the psychoanalytical theory, since, I could try to get that reasoning back to our childhood of why she does certain things. Furthermore, after learning these theories, not just the ones in my presentation, but, as an overall throughout this course, I tend to find myself unconsciously analyzing certain situations through the lens of this class, especially when it comes to, kids or my work or anything, and just learning through the class, I'm able to label the way that I see things and how people do what they, do. I tend to analyze people, when they make certain decisions and see it from their point of view. So now I can actually put a name to what I'm thinking, and why people make certain decisions. To conclude through the course, because I assume that you're going to be watching this, I just wanted to say thank you. I really enjoyed this class. Online classes can be pretty difficult, and I enjoyed that you let us answer each assignment pretty freely. I also enjoyed that your assignments kind of made me think and analyze the way that I think, while also tying it back to the material that we learned. And then just adding in, find a little insight into it. A question that I tend to think about a lot, and I also ask a lot of people that I'm close with the same question, which is, do we become more compassionate through the hardships in our life, making us more mature and understanding? Or is it something that's already pre-wired in our brain to be, compassionate and understanding and more analytical in our thinking? But yeah, thank you so much for the course, and I hope you have a good break, and good luck on your next classes too.